Likes to hear us talk about him. Are you there?
I bet you thought I wasn't
There
coming
he
in.
is.
I was just having Naomi and Kathy kind of introduce themselves by sharing how they decided to come and visit and join us on these Saturday mornings. And it was Kathy's turn just as you showed up. So
Okay, well, that's a great idea.
see, I knew you'd like it.
Can they repeat it so I can record it, or does it matter?
Naomi, will you repeat it?
Oh, sure,
Are you
sure.
recording? Are you recording now?
Yes. So yeah,
Well, my
Naomi.
history goes back, quite a few, I should say 5 or 6 years. I don't remember. Just by happenstance listening to Coast to Coast Radio, and Anthony was on there, and it just kind of blew my mind. So I immediately, before even falling asleep that night, ordering the book. Then I received the book days later and kind of devoured it, and then put it to the side. Actually, it's like stretching my mind. I just had to, what did I just read here? And so anyway, through happenstance, just picked it up again. And anyway, here I am and participating kind of randomly. Sorry I don't get to be here every week, but anyway, I enjoy the camaraderie here. So.
Yeah, that's great. So what can you remember specifically what it was that caught your attention? I think this must have been in 2017 when
Yeah.
I was on Coast to Coast. That was in January, I think, of 2017.
Yep. So yeah, that was 5.5 years ago.
So can you remember what it was?
Just kind of your story, actually your story of when you were 10 years old, just your visualization, your story. And that's kind of what hooked me. And then kind of how you explain things. So that's specifically kind of what hooked me to keep listening to it. So.
Good.
But.
Yeah, well, Thanks for that. And so now that you've been involved, because you've been here more or less regularly since about February or March, right?
Right. Yeah.
So how's it going now?
Going well, I think, really well. I mean, so one of my first goals was to actually to untether myself from a career I've been tethered to for 40 years. So, and I'm not untethered. I mean, I haven't quit, but just kind of establish a plan, a realistic plan with purpose and confidence. And I've established that plan. And I've also now established a goal after that plan, from a financial perspective. So I don't have to dip into any of my savings or anything. So I am close to retirement age, but not quite there yet. So I just, anyway, so yeah, and I attribute the goal setting through this program and
Great.
establishing the confidence to do it. So it's life-changing.
Great. Well, thanks. That's a great testimonial. Well, you're probably exactly right. I mean, for me, probably the two pieces that attracted me to this whole thing, right, was number one, the goal setting, which I learned from Paul Meyer, the whole workbook thing, which is basically about, okay, how do you set a goal? How do you decide? How do you plan? Which is exactly what you said, right? And the other part is the feeling side. How do you believe? How do you have the confidence? Right? Those are both the things that attracted me. So so it makes sense, of course, that's what caught your attention too. So Kathy, welcome.
Hi.
And so we had some fireworks here. Welcome.
Yes, because I officially signed up for the thing this morning.
I noticed that on my email. Yes. that's terrific. So what I'll do is I'll send you an email later today, and
Okay.
it'll give you a link to this online program.
Okay.
And the online program contains the workbook. It contains a digital copy of my book. It contains a couple of meditation exercises, all of which are very important, you know.
hmm
And it contains about 3.5 hours worth of video, I think 19 videos, which
Okay.
explain essentially how to go through the workbook.
Okay, perfect.
And I received an email yesterday or the day before because we use this Discord app, right? And he was having trouble getting into the Discord app. He's been a part of the community now. He signed up about 3 months ago or something. But for some reason, I wasn't able to get him into the Discord. You know, I sent him a link, and he said he didn't get it, and whatever. You know, but he did send me a couple of questions, which was good. And one of the questions was, can you do a session on how to go through the workbook? So I thought of writing back to him and saying, if you look at video number 7 in the online course, it explains all that, right? But
Okay.
I didn't do that. But one of the videos in there basically goes through the workbook, you know, page by page. But I'm going to talk about it a little bit today too.
Okay.
So that'll be helpful. So what brings you here? I know that you were invited by Jessica. You're an old friend of hers, or a friend of hers,
Mm-hmm.
and a young friend of hers, and
No, not really.
and
Smooth, Anthony, smooth.
so I don't know much about you or your goals or what kind of changes you might be wanting to make. So maybe, you know, you can just give us a quick, 1 or 2 minute introduction and let us know what your
Well,
what your
let's
goal is.
see. I was born the daughter of a poor sharecropper.
Yes, that's right.
I'm kidding. I like to start my stories like that. But
Yeah.
anyway, I became interested in you, not that way. But
What?
He's married. Settle down.
I became interested in you and the book and the program because Jessica has been talking about it, and I thought I might as well give it a chance and
Right.
put some effort into it, and because I'm always looking to make changes, I'm always trying to improve myself, and right at this moment, I'm really struggling with depression. I'm having a really hard time. So I'm just trying to do whatever I can to pull myself out of that. So thinking that this will be something that will really help.
Yes, absolutely. Well, I think it will.
Yeah.
It certainly helped me. It helped me a lot. And other goals? Do you have anything specific other than, I mean, that's a big one, but
Well, as Jessica knows, I'm always in courses. So I always have a course that I'm in, which of course my goal is to finish the course and do well. I have talked over the years about starting a business. I just completed my holistic nutritionist certification, and I have a couple other certifications, but I've never done anything with it because I have too much fear and I don't know what to offer, like what it even looks like. So you go through the courses. I did, the one course was 2 years, but they teach you about nutrition and the science and all that kind of stuff, but they don't really teach you like what now. They have a business course, but they don't teach you what to offer. Like, I don't know. So it's really hard for me. I can't even think of like what I would offer. So
right.
yeah.
Okay, well, I have some ideas about that.
Okay. Really, I really am interested in like not weight loss or anything like that. I've become very interested in nutrition for your mind. That was the last course in my program, and it fascinated me. And as someone who suffers with depression and anxiety, the way they talked about how supplements and nutrition can really help with that is very interesting to me. So I feel like that's where I would want to focus.
Perfect.
Yeah.
That's great.
Was that too long? That was way more than 2 minutes.
No, you were perfect. Yeah, so I had depression for a long time, but I was never diagnosed clinically or anything, by a doctor. But I certainly was depressed. I mean, at the time, maybe I didn't realize I was depressed. I just thought I was angry,
Yeah.
But for sure, I was. And the thing that if you've heard my story about having the dream and then, kind of blowing it and thinking I'm never going to get there and all that, to me, that was probably, I think, if not the cause of whatever depression I was going through, but it was certainly a big factor, And it was because I thought I've blown it. I was born, I had this destiny thing that was kind of in front of me, that I saw in this dream. And then when I thought that I completely blew it, then, I thought I'm never going to get there. My life is pointless. I'm a loser. And that kind of spiral just got me down, down and down and down, right? Mm-hmm. So I think that for me, and I think for a lot of people, but I don't know you, so I can't talk about your situation, but what I've heard and what I've read and what I've experienced myself is this idea that, there's no point. In other words, I'm never going to make it. I'm never going to get anywhere. My life is never going to be worth anything. Those kind of thoughts. Mm-hmm. That's, I think, a big part of what depression is, right? And so one of the things that I learned, and we'll talk about it today. We've been talking about it quite a bit in the last 4 or 5 sessions, but we'll talk about it again today, is this idea that when you have a goal, or goals, but let's say a goal, to improve your life, let's say, that's pretty general, right? But if you have a goal and you have a plan and your plan is working and you're actually moving ahead, you're not depressed. Or at least you're less depressed. I mean, I'm not sure about depression. I'm not a medical person, But the idea that I'm actually making progress, I have something that I want that's important to me, I'm moving towards it, I feel like I'm making progress, I feel like my plan is working. It's pretty hard to be depressed because you're moving ahead, you're getting somewhere, right? So does that resonate with you? Does that make any sense to you?
It does, yeah.
So, so this is session 43. So this is a map of inner space-time. And this is probably what I'm most proud of. Of all the things I've done in my life, this is the thing that I think is my biggest contribution to the world, is this map. Because the difficult thing when we start acknowledging our thoughts or thinking about our thoughts is we don't have any way of thinking about what a thought is. Right? You know, what's a thought? What is it? We hear all kinds of people say thoughts are things and thoughts are powerful and, you know, whatever. But what a thought is, people can't picture, or they have no concept of it, which was where I was for like 15 years or something as I was getting into this whole study in science, right? So it took around 20 years after that dream, and I spent 20 years trying to explain this, right? And what I finally came up with was the notion, the realization, the idea, maybe a metaphor, if nothing else, to explain what a thought is. And what a thought is, according to Anthony Hamilton, it's a connection. So, for example, if I say to you, Kathy, you know, what did you have for dinner last night? You can tell me, probably, right? And the reason you can do that is because you can remember having dinner last night. And so what that is on this chart here is a connection between here, it's called the now point, right? In the middle, this is now, this is the physical present, right? This is where the body lives. So you're always in the present. And this world line, can you see the world line here? I'm not sure, can you see my mouse moving?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So this is the path that you've taken through time. Physically, this is the physical path you've taken through time, right? So if I say, what did you have for dinner last night? What happens is you make a connection in your mind between this point here, the now point in the middle, and some point on your world line 18 hours ago, right? And so what we call that is a memory. So here's another picture of it. So this is the now, this A is the memory, right? So if I say, where did you go to high school, or do you remember what one of your teacher's names was in high school, your mind goes back on your world line. It goes back here someplace into the past and goes, oh, here, I remember being in high school 20 years ago, whatever, Mr. So-and-so, you know. And so this map contains a model. This is a map of what I call inner space-time, which is basically everything that you can think about. So, for example, A would be a memory, and these other points in the past here, these little circles, right? These represent things that might have happened but didn't. So they're not on the world line. In other words, they didn't happen physically. They happened mentally, you know. I talked last week about a race that I ran when I was in grade 5 or 6 or something that I almost won. I could have won. Maybe I should have won, but I didn't win because I got nipped at the finish line by another guy, right? So that would be on this map. It would be one of these little circles here. It would be a spot that wasn't on my world line. Could have been, should have been, maybe, might have been, but it wasn't, right? So maybe I can regret that, you see? So here, if you can see my mouse, that might be called a regret, right? Or a failure or something like that. Whereas a positive thing, you know, a past success might be might be, well, it would be physical, right? If this was something I wanted to do here, and I actually did it, this was a goal that I reached, then the world line would go through there, the same as a train would go through a station, right? And so this is the past. So in the past, we can connect with events on our world line, which we generally call memories. We can also think of things that could have happened but didn't, some of which were positive, some of which were negative, right? Now, when you look into the future's up here. Everything is virtual at this point because the future's not physical yet, right? So all of these things, all of these little circles, some of these are negative, that like a fear or something you're worried about or something that you don't want. That would be over here in the negative future. Whereas something that you do want, you know, an expectation, a goal, a dream, that would be on the positive future, right? But they're all virtual. You know, they're all virtual events, right? Over here, B, that's a virtual present. So it's an event that could be happening right now that isn't. For example, it could be raining outside, but it's not. But I can imagine that it's raining outside with my imagination, with my inner senses. I can imagine that it's raining outside because it could be raining, you know, but it's not, right? So that's the map of inner space-time. Now that, to me, that's the thing I'm the most proud of everything I've ever thought of. That's my best idea in my whole life. Because what it does is it gives everybody who understands this, you know, a simple way to understand every thought you have. Because every thought you have is going to be on that map somewhere. It's either going to be a memory of something that happened. It's going to be a thought of something that didn't happen, that could have happened, either negative, you know, like I was in a car accident one time. I could have been hurt, but I wasn't, right? So the car accident was physical. Me being hurt was non-physical. It was a virtual event. I didn't get hurt. A friend of mine hurt his leg, but I didn't get hurt. Whereas that job that I got fired from, that I can remember, that's an event that I can remember that I regret. It was a negative experience for me to lose that job, right? Likewise, in the future, my goals are virtual events that I could create, or I can aim towards, I can move towards them. Negative virtual events in the future are things I want to avoid, right? Some of which are going to be physical and some of which aren't. So this call that we're experiencing right now, this is a physical event. And an hour ago, it was a virtual event. All of us were thinking about it, right? And as a matter of fact, because I was late getting here today, I apologize for that. You might have gone through a period there around about 10 o'clock when you said, gee, is this call going to happen or not? You know, maybe it's just a virtual event that didn't take place. So that map of inner space-time and the idea that thinking is a connection, those two together, they're the best ideas I've ever had. And I've spent, since 1980, I've spent now, 40 something years talking about it, right? So that's the thing I'm most proud of. And so, because if you don't have a way to think about what it is you're trying to think about, then you're lost. You have no control over your thoughts, over your imagination, right? And so that map there, that I think is a super powerful thing. And I got it from Albert Einstein. Because Einstein said, we think we live in a three-dimensional world, but we live in a four-dimensional world. The fourth dimension is time. And he said the laws of time are the same as the laws of space. Well, every physicist knows that's true. Every physicist works with that, But as people, we don't think that way. Normally, we don't think that way. So that's why I call this program and this work that I'm doing, I call it, psychology for the 21st century, right? Because our psychology so far is based on a concept from the 17th century called Newtonian mechanics, which says non-physical things don't have any effect on the physical world. There's the physical world, right? Like a baseball. Somebody throws a baseball at me. If I have a baseball bat, I can hit the ball and it'll go. That's physical. That's what Newton talks about, right? But what Einstein talks about is thinking about hitting the ball. Now, according to Newton, it doesn't have any effect. A thought doesn't have any effect. He called it a spiritual event. He said the spiritual world and the physical world are totally separate. They don't have any effect on each other. Well, that's totally wrong as far as I'm concerned, but that's, but so his ideas of physical events and how they operate, they work perfectly well for launching a rocket into outer space and something like that. Hitting a baseball out of the park, kicking a football around a field. Newtonian mechanics explains all of that stuff perfectly. But what it doesn't explain, what it can't explain, what it has no hope of explaining, is how somebody can come up with an idea to build a building and then scribble a little plan on a piece of paper and then draw up some plans to build a house and then buy some wood, raise some money, put together a crew, build the house, and eventually move into it. All of that stuff is what we do with our mind, with our thoughts. Newtonian mechanics has zero to say about that. And by and large, psychology has nothing to say about that either. Psychology uses what they call the medical model, which is they treat people that have disease. You ask a doctor, how do I get healthy? What is he going to say? Lose weight, exercise. That's it.
Or here's the pill. Take this pill.
Yeah, here's a pill. This will cure your disease, but he's not going to make you healthier by giving you a pill. He might say take some, better nutrition or something like that, right? But certainly if you ask somebody, how do I become more successful? They don't have a clue, right? Because being successful involves using your thinking in the future and in the past, which is what we're talking about in this program, right? So yeah, so that idea of that inner space-time and the fact that your mind is a connection which connects your present to any place on this map, right? Now, of course, some places on this map are completely imaginary. Like, for example, if you like, Lord of the Rings, well, Lord of the Rings is a story about a place that's completely imaginary, about people that are completely imaginary, Every movie that's ever been made, every story that's ever been told, every piece of music that's ever been written, all of which end up as physical things, that you can watch or you can listen to, right? They all start out as an idea in somebody's mind. So this idea of creativity, how do we create as human beings? How do we create our life? By and large, psychology has nothing to say about that. But psychology is changing. There is a bit of a change now, and psychology, there is a branch of psychology, or let's say a new version of psychology that's just kind of emerging now, that's called positive psychology. Because for the first time, starting about 40 years ago, 50 years ago perhaps, people started looking at what is it that makes people happy and successful. So the idea of setting goals and, you know, positive affirmations and visualizing and having plans and working towards plans and those kind of things, you know, those are all relatively new ideas. Now, people have been using these for hundreds of years, thousands of years. Every person who's ever built a house, you know, you go back 1,000 years ago, and people were building houses back then. But if you ask them how they did it, they would just say something like, well, I just use my imagination. Well, that's not very clear. That's like saying, well, I just use my thinking. Well, to say I'm just using my thinking, that's not very clear. That doesn't help anybody. It's not specific enough. So that's why I say I'm so proud of this map of inner space-time, in the idea that your imagination is a connection. When you imagine having dinner last night, you literally form a connection. According to this model that I'm using here, you literally form a connection through time to last dinner, you know, last night when you were having dinner. And the information comes through, the memories come through, and you can taste the food, and, you know, you can remember the conversation if you were with somebody, you know. All that information can come through just like a telephone call, or just like a Zoom call that we're on right now. So, you know, you're in Kelowna, right? Kamloops, or no?
Me? I'm in a Soyuz.
Soyuz, yeah. So you're in a Soyuz, and Jessica is in Vancouver or Burnaby, right? Coquitlam. I'm in Victoria. Naomi is in South Dakota. South Dakota or North Dakota? South, right? Yeah. So on this map, then I mean, you could easily on a map of North America, you could draw 4 lines, you know, of we're all coming together now into my computer in Victoria, right? Or into your computer in Soyuz, right? So we can do the same thing in the inner world, which is the purpose of that map of inner space-time that I just showed you there. So what we were talking about, and what we've been talking about the past couple of weeks, is what happens when we have a goal and we get knocked off course. And so this is what we were talking about the last couple of weeks. This idea here of this purple line represents the world line of somebody, right? These green spots here, they represent places on the world line. So they'd be physical events, right? And each of these, of course, you can make a different decision, right? You can decide to go over to the left here, aiming at this goal, this possible goal, but it doesn't happen, right? So you decide to keep on going, so you end up here. Now, if you have a goal that you're trying to reach over here, this green one on the right, this is your intention, right? You want to reach this goal, but something happens, something comes in to knock you off purpose. This unseen force, some part of your subconscious mind or your unconscious mind says, I'm not sure that's a good idea. I think I'll just stick to what I'm doing, right? So you end up here instead of over here where you want to go because something prevented you from making this decision. So this is what we were talking about the last couple of weeks, right? So yeah. So I think that's enough about that. But that's,
I love the awareness though, like, you know, when especially putting pictures to it. And like I said last week, I love the idea of like the quarterback coming along and like giving me a shove and having those things to remind me so that when I'm in that moment of decision, it's like, am I going to like, are my feet going to move? Am I going to get out of the way of this guy or am I going to let him hit me? And, you know, it's kind of fun to kind of play with it that way. And it makes it easier, I think, to make decisions in those moments. That's how I'm enjoying this anyways.
Oh yeah. Well, obviously for me too, right? I mean, I like
Mhm.
thinking visually, and of course, most people do because, well, they say picture's worth 1,000 words for one thing, but also your eyes pick up much more information
Mhm.
than any other of your senses, right? Except maybe your body. I'm not sure. Your body's picking up all kinds of information too. But yeah, visual things are important teaching tools, right? I mean, that's why so many people use drawings and graphs and slides and things like that, right?
Mhm.
So, so once you have that map of inner spacetime, and of course that map of inner spacetime is modeled after a map of outer spacetime. In other words, it's it's a map of your city, or it's a map of BC, or it's a map of South Dakota, right? You can say, oh, I'm going to take this highway down here, I'm going to go to this intersection, turn there, and like that. So it's easy to understand, right? And of course, in terms of setting goals and things, it's great to have a map like that because you can say, okay, well, in 6 months' time, if I want to, start a business, let's say, um, you can draw it on that map. You can say, that's my goal. What am I going to do to get to that goal? By the way, do you know what it takes to have a business? What,
Waiting.
what do you think it takes to have a business?
Jessica?
I'm thinking I need an idea. That's what I'm thinking. A thought.
Well, of course, that's where it starts, right?
Yeah.
So what is tangible physical proof that you have a business?
You make money.
Where does the money come from?
From other people.
That is profound. That is exactly right. Don't joke, Jessica. This will blow your mind when you think
It
about it.
sounds so simple.
It is simple. So a business means getting a client, right?
Mhm.
So in terms of you and talking about thinking, I mean, we've been talking about thinking now for 43 weeks, right? But when you think about a business, how do you represent in your mind what a business is? It might be a very kind of fuzzy, nondescript picture, right? I mean, when you think of a business, you can think of like Facebook. There's a business. There's 5 billion people in it or something, right? Or you can think of a business like a dentist. You know, he has people come to him one after the other, and he fixes their teeth. Or a massage therapist, or something like that, right? If you think of like a grocery store, then that's a business too, but it's a different kind of business. They might have 50 suppliers that are bringing in all kinds of different products. But for you, for example, if you want to work with people as far as nutrition consulting goes, or nutrition counseling, let's say, right? Is that kind of what you have in mind?
I think so, but I'm not 100% clear, and well, we can talk about that another time, but
Yeah, well, becoming clear, of course, is a process, right? It's like,
yeah.
it's like the
Yeah.
person drawing the house, designing the house. He can start with a sketch and say, okay, here, this is my house. But then, by the time he finishes 6 months later, he's got detailed plans for every square inch of that place, right?
Yeah.
But certainly, if you think in terms of like coaching somebody or educating somebody, then you can call that person a client, right? So all you need to think about, at least at this point, is how do I get a client? How can I find one client? You have one client, then you're in business. You have a business. Everybody starts that way. Every business starts with one person, right? With one client. So that brings it down to size. Then it's manageable. Then it's like, the question is not how do I get my business up and running? The question is, how do I find a client? It's a little more manageable, right?
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, what you said about money, all money comes from other people. So, in terms of earning money, prosperity consciousness, attracting wealth, law of attraction, all that stuff, what it comes down to is having successful relationships with other people. Because all the money you get comes through other people. And you're a good example of that, right? You paid some money this morning, and now here you are, part of our online community, right? And so I was going to ask you what you thought when you decided to make that investment. And I'll say investment because it's an investment in you. That's the point, right? So
That's how I think of it.
yeah, that's
as
exactly
an investment.
right. That's right.
Yeah.
So this is an investment in me. This money I'm putting in here, this is a statement of my commitment to myself, kind of. You know,
Yeah.
that's how I would frame it. Because lots of times, well, I mean, in a lot of ways, it's always that way when you buy something. Even if you buy a coffee mug, you know, this is a tangible thing. But when I buy this, I buy it because I'm buying it for me, you know. Yeah, that's right. That's right. So, yeah.
Right,
So
and
that's,
we invest our money where we think it's, well, sometimes people waste money. I think we all do, unless you're exceptionally frugal, but I might pay for this community and someone else may think, wow, what a waste of money. But maybe they spend $10 a day on a Starbucks.
right.
And so the next person might think, well, what a waste of money. So
Yeah.
it's what's important to us.
That's exactly right. Yeah, you decide what it's worth, and you decide what it means, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So, like you said, considering it to be an investment in your own growth, to me, that's the best. That's the best way to think about it.
Yeah.
This program that we're on, using this workbook, which has about 25 worksheets in it, which are places to write down your ideas. And some of the ideas are going to be goals. What do I want? Right? I want more money. I want more business. I want more health. I want a better relationship. I want a trip to France. Whatever. I mean, those could be possible goals, right? So there's worksheets where you can write down those things. And so one of the worksheets that I was going to talk about today, I sent Jessica and Naomi an email asking you to start filling out your acknowledging list. Did you see that email, Naomi?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I did see it briefly. Yep.
So did you put anything on there?
Not yet. I was thinking it. I'm in the thinking stage. No, I haven't yet. Sorry.
Well, the thinking stage is the first stage, right? So that's good.
Yeah.
So, let's ask. So let me ask you, what are some benefits that you've received from being in this program now? And you can even start when you bought the book, let's say, which is 5 years ago.
Well, it's the framework in which to establish goals and accomplish them. And it's the framework actually is what helps, is the vehicle in which to get things done. And so, and the self-taught, that's part of the framework as
Right.
well. So,
Right. So what have you accomplished since you joined us in February or so?
well, I don't have a long list, but I think two significant things. One is really, both are life altering or affecting. I've been in a job forever. I used to love my job, but I'm at a stage I want to do something different. But so the goal was to untether myself. I think I mentioned this before, but to untether myself, but realistically do that and purposefully and with confidence. And so when I got laid off one time before, I mean, it was devastating. So how do I do that because I want to do it versus have it affect me? And anyway, I created a plan. So that was part of the plan. I mean, the goal was to establish a plan, which I have established the plan, the line in the sand. I've communicated that to the powers that be at work, and then now, okay, what am I going to do for, after that? So I've developed another plan to not dip into my 401k or whatever. So I have a plan to for the financial part of it, and which I wouldn't have had that before, without, like one goal leads to the next. And so it's, it takes practice, and you get better at the second one, I think, and then you get better at the third one, and et cetera, et cetera. So, and I also have a goal, kind of like what Greg, the other participant, had, to lose weight, how many pounds in, 1 year, so X amount of pounds in a year. So I've kind of focused on that too. So again, the list isn't all that long, but it's really, the ones that I do have been really life altering.
Great. Well, those are big things. I mean, you say it's a small list, but I think when you explained it, we can certainly get a sense of how important they are for you, and how important the process is of getting that clarity, right?
Mm-hmm.
And having a system for increasing your clarity and setting your goals. I mean, that's a big thing. This is what stops a lot of people, I think. That's why I said I was so proud of myself for coming up with that landscape of inner space-time, and the idea that thinking is a connection. I'm thinking about myself a year from now, out of that business, out of that company, in a different situation, but still financially stable and secure, and feeling confident and happy, and losing a few pounds. Right? That's your kind of an image of your goal.
Yeah.
So that's a big deal. That's a big deal. Thanks. I'm just going to step away for a second. I need to let the cat out, and the sun is shining right in my face again, so I'm going to put something over there. I'll be right back. Okay.
I'm excited to hear how all of this plays out for you, Naomi. I love watching.
Thank you.
I love watching other people's journeys, right? I love watching that moment when you're like, okay, I can actually do this.
Mm-hmm.
And then seeing people actually take those steps. It's super fun for me. So I'm glad that you keep showing up and sharing, because it's fun. So
I apologize for my voice. I've got something going on. I'm on sinus medicine, and I don't have a strong voice anyway, and it doesn't help being sick. So.
It's all sexy and raspy.
That's right. Well, that's great. So put those on your acknowledging list when you have a chance. I know you're sitting in your car now. Jessica, what about you?
Yeah, I started writing things down. I mean, we've been talking all the way along, so a lot of things have happened for me through this. So I can start lifting off like tangible things, like publishing books and doing all these different things, right? But as I was listening to Naomi, I'm thinking that I think the real, the deep part of it is that I have this belief in myself that I can accomplish what I want. And I think that's the big difference. Like before, there was always this sense of, well, I want it, and if I keep trying, maybe it'll happen, but I doubt it, but I'm going to keep trying anyways, right? And it's kind of this vicious circle of working, and then going, crap, I don't know. And, it kind of like you were like the quarterback keeps coming along and knocking me off my course, right? And so what I think is, if I wanted to put what's on my acknowledging list, I wrote it down. It's like, there's this sense of, it's done. I'm just waiting for it to appear now. right? Like
Okay,
I
so-
truly believe that the things that I want and that I'm working towards, they're going to happen. Like I don't even have any question in my mind anymore. It's just a matter of when, not if. That I think is the biggest change for me through this. Does that make sense?
Yep. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it does. What about some tangible things? Give us a list of those.
Yeah, well, I mean, I ended up getting a few clients through this year that like were attracted to me. Like I have not chased anybody at all this year. Like I told you when you and I first started this that my goal for 2022 was to 100% just focus on me and learning for me. And so I wasn't going out looking for people, but people are starting to come to me and for really different things than I would have ever thought to be promoting. So I just got hired to put together a course for, quite a substantial real estate agent, right? I never would have thought to go looking for that. I've published 4 books. I've been talking to publishers about 2 more that I want to do. What else? I changed jobs. I got quite a big raise this year by changing jobs. And like, there's just a lot of things. And I manifested just this week, I manifested $1,200 from 3 completely random sources. Right. So it's just tapping into all the stuff and seeing the world differently and showing up differently seems to be just bringing things to me that I wasn't expecting and didn't really go looking for. So.
Wow.
Yeah, pretty cool. Oh, and then I got, I get these wonderful things in the mail that I'm not expecting from amazing people. And
Yeah, that's your mug, right?
that's my mug that Anthony sent me.
I like that.
I am my future self now.
Yes. There's me in my superwoman pose.
Great.
Cool.
So why am I talking about the acknowledging list?
Because it changes your state when you feel good.
Yes, that's it.
I'm a good student.
That's true. Those worksheets in the workbook, they are a filing system for your ideas, for your good ideas. That's how I look at it. So all of the worksheets are places where you put various ideas. So for example, one of them is Master Dream List. That's a place where you put down your dreams. I'd like this, I'd like that. Wouldn't it be fantastic if I could do this, if this would happen, blah, blah, blah. Those are dreams, right? And then other sheets are for your goals. Well, a goal is something that's specific. So that's more tangible. Other worksheets are places where you put down your plans, step 1, step 2, step 3, right? So all of these worksheets, they're for clarifying your thinking so that rather than just, some kind of nebulous thought, like I'd love to go to Europe, you have a thought like, okay, I just reserved a bed and breakfast in Paris for 2 weeks in July. That's much more specific, right? So the worksheets, the goal setting and the planning, they're for getting clear like that, more clear, right? And some other worksheets are to give you, well, for want of a better term, I could say spiritual energy, right? Or what you just said, change your state, right? So we have 50,000 thoughts a day, so the psychologists tell us, more or less, Now, each of those thoughts potentially can change your feelings, your state, your emotions, right? So one of the worksheets that we've talked a lot about, and you may have heard us talk about this, Kathy, or maybe Jessica mentioned it, is what I call your past successes list. So the past successes list is a place where you write down things for you that represent a past event that was successful. So, for example, learning how to drive a car, finishing the course that you just finished, those are past successes, right? Graduating high school, learning how to ride a bicycle, learning how to swim, learning how to dance, those can be past successes, right? Other past successes can be things like learning how to cook an egg, learning how to make a muffin, learning how to make French toast. Now, all of those things are equally important. Of course, graduating from university or taking a course that took you 2 years, that has a lot more involved in it than cooking an egg. But they're perfectly equal in the sense that they make you feel a certain way. And the way they make you feel is successful, because it's a past successes list. If I asked you to write a past failure list, you could do that too, but I didn't ask you to do that, right? There's not a past failure list in the workbook, but there is a past successes list. So the idea behind the past successes then is to have a place on that map of inner space-time that you can send your mind to, and you can channel that success energy. Literally what it is. The same as my computer is channeling your information from 3 other cities, right? So if you think of your past as just a bunch of things that happened that don't have any effect on you now, then of course a past success is not going to have any value. It's just something that happened. So what, right? But when you realize that it's a place in your mind, inner space-time, it's a place that you can visit, where you can channel information and energy from, then it becomes a totally different thing, right? It's like an oil company spending millions of dollars to find a place where they can drill down and find oil. Once they find the oil, that's a success, right? They then channel that oil through the pipelines, and they do that for years, decades perhaps, until the thing runs out, right? So that's the value of the past success, is that you can channel that energy. And what psychologists now have proven in around 1995 and shortly after that, that doing that, in other words, sending your mind there and channeling that energy into your body so that you feel successful and happy and you appreciate yourself, and all the positive energy that comes with finishing a diploma, finishing a degree, buying a new car, buying a house, whatever it might be, learning how to cook an egg. That energy comes into your body and it changes your body and changes your brain. You do that every day for 5 or 10 minutes, 5 minutes, even for 30 seconds. And it's like practicing the piano for 5 minutes a day. At the end of 30 days, you're going to get better. And that's what scientists now say, that after about 30 days, they can measure specific changes in your brain from doing this kind of exercise. So that's the value of the past successes list. And the acknowledging list is similar to the past successes list. Like all those things that Jessica just mentioned. They're all things that have happened since January when we started these calls. So they're past successes. But we write them on the acknowledging list for a specific purpose. And the purpose is to remind ourselves that what we're doing is working. Because if you forget that it's working, then you can get knocked off purpose. That football player comes in and knocks you because you're not sure that you're doing the right thing. right? So, once you realize this, you realize that you have to acknowledge yourself. You have to remind yourself, and the acknowledging list is a way of doing that, that what you're doing, this program that you're now in, this idea that you're writing down goals and you're listening to these recordings and you're doing the meditation exercises and you're visualizing and you're writing down your dreams and goals and things like that, it's actually working. Because if you forget that it's working, the next time you encounter an obstacle, you're liable to quit. And of course, if you quit, then you stop getting all the benefits, right? So it's an important thing. And the acknowledging list, my friend John Kehoe, who I've talked about, he tells a great story about the acknowledging list. He was in Australia teaching his Mind Power course. And he met a woman there in his course. And about 6 months later, she called him from Australia. He was living in Vancouver at the time. And she says, John, I got to talk to you. I got to talk to you. You know, this is so fantastic. Since I've been taking this Mind Power training from you, you know, you remember when I first met you, I said, you know, what I needed to do was I needed to find a house because I was living in this crowded apartment with my kids and I wanted a new relationship and I wanted a new house and I wanted to be able to afford to take a trip to England to visit my parents because I hadn't seen my parents in 5 years and they haven't seen their grandkids in 5 years, you know. And she said, guess what? You know, after doing your exercises and visualizing, I met this fantastic guy and we're in love and we moved in together into this great big house. His kids love my kids love his kids. We're one huge happy family. Last month we all took a trip to England. We visited my parents. They got to see the grandkids. They got to meet my new husband or boyfriend, you know. And I just want to tell you, I'm just so excited. Everything is working so fantastic. I have to thank you for that. So he said, well, that's great. You know, I'm really thrilled. I'm thrilled that it's working for you and you're getting all these benefits, right? So she says, the next time you come to Australia, I want you to tell me. I can pick you up at the airport and I'll drive you to wherever you're going, right? So he said, yeah, okay, great. So about 6 months later, he was back in Australia. So he contacted this lady and she came to the airport and picked him up. And she was driving him into town. And she said, can I ask you a question, John? And he said, yeah, what is it? She said, why doesn't Mind Power work for me? Why isn't Mind Power working? It seems to work for so many people. How come I can't get it to work for me? So he said, pull over here. Stop this car. He said, have I got you confused with somebody else? Tell me if I have you right or not. Aren't you the woman who called me about 6 months ago and said, you know, you were so excited because you had this new house and this new boyfriend and you were living together and you went to England to visit your family and your kids love his kids and his kids love your kids and your life is so perfect? Is that you? And she said, oh yeah, I forgot.
Oh my gosh.
You forgot. How do you forget? Well, you forget because everybody forgets, you know?
Yeah.
Like when I said a few minutes ago, think of the success energy that you felt when you learned how to ride a bicycle, or when you learned how to fry an egg or make a muffin, or when you finished high school. You've forgotten all those, right? So you need to write them down. You need to spend a few minutes every day remembering your past successes and especially your acknowledging list. Because if you forget that this program that you're now on is working, And you'll forget it. I mean, you will forget it. There's no question about it. You'll forget it, for an hour or a day or whatever. And something comes up, like that football player out of left field, you find yourself in a slump. And you're going to go, I'm not going to continue with this. This thing isn't showing me any benefits, right? You forget, right? So that acknowledging list is important to keep you on track. Because when you lose sight of the fact that you're actually moving ahead, well, your energy goes down, you go into a slump, you may get depressed, right? Nothing's working for me. Wait a second, didn't you just find a new boyfriend and find a new house and take a trip to England? Oh, yeah. So that's a great story, but it happens to all of us, right? So it's, and so what I was going to say then about all the worksheets in that workbook, some of them are sort of logical, conscious things, that you write down, you work your plans and that kind of thing. But other ones are to give you a specific kind of energy, to channel the success energy that you need to stay motivated, stay on purpose, keep doing what's working,
Mm-hmm. So this reminded me, and Kathy can probably back me up on this. We've both taken our NLP training, and they refer to that as NLP amnesia, because quite often once you fix something or change something or see something differently, you completely forget about who you used to be because you're now engulfing this new identity, right? And so it's got a term, it's a thing, right?
Absolutely. Well, you've heard the expression, you don't know what you've got until it's gone, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's exactly the same thing. I mean, have you ever had the experience where you did something, maybe you quit a job or, you moved into a new place, or you got rid of a relationship or something and got a new relationship, and then later you realized, geez, actually, that was a mistake. I should have stayed at that job, or I should have stayed in that other apartment. I didn't realize this place has all these noisy neighbors, Or the old boyfriend, actually he wasn't that bad.
Grass isn't always greener, right?
That's right. So you have to remind yourself, hey, the grass is green right here. There's a great recording, one of these classic recordings. It's by a guy named Russell Conwell. It's called Acres of Diamonds. Have you heard that story?
No, Cromwell?
I think his name is Cronwell, yeah. I'll find a link to it and I'll send you a link. But it's a story called Acres of Diamonds, right? And it's about this guy that was living in Africa, and he sold his farm, and he took all the money that he got from his farm and he traveled around because his ambition was to find diamonds, to find a diamond mine. He thought, I'll take all the money I've got and I'll invest it and I'll travel and I'll search for diamonds. Well, eventually he spent all his money and ended up destitute. But the person that bought his farm, and you know what's going to come, right? You know the story, you can tell. He discovered diamonds on the guy's property. The guy was literally living on top of a diamond mine, and he sold it and went traveling somewhere else looking for diamonds. And, so it's a great story. I'll send you a link to it. It's probably on YouTube or something.
It's like that Darcy guy the 3 Feet from Gold story, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's similar idea, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I think that's good for today. Anybody have any questions or comments or?
No, good stuff.
So I'm glad you're here, Kathy.
Thank you.
I'll
Glad
send
to
you
be here.
Yeah, I'll send you a link today to that online program, and and you'll see. And I think you have my audiobook.
I have your audiobook.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I find one of the things that really pays off for me is listening to some positive stuff every day. Either on YouTube, a lot of it's on YouTube, or meditation exercises, or listening to my audiobook or somebody else's audiobook. I do that every day, probably, I would say. it just keeps you in the right frame of mind, right? So so your task for this week is fill out that acknowledging list.
It's a really good reminder. Very good point.
Yeah.
Very good point.
Okay.
It's
well,
funny.
thanks.
Back in 2016, when I started on my own personal journey and started working towards coaching and website and all that stuff, I actually created a Facebook page called My Best Year. And I wrote down, I had an acknowledging list on the go because I knew that I would forget who I used to be. And I wanted to be able to go back so that I could see my progress.
Yeah.
So, yeah, huge.
So,
it was huge.
Yeah, exactly. So what we've been talking about for the last month, I think, is the quality of your now, which means your present, today, your present state, you know. So we talked about the meaning of your now and improving your now and appreciating the now and stuff like that. Well, this is another aspect of the same thing. It's like right now, like you're on one of those green dots on your timeline. So to remind yourself that you're actually in a great space, you're in a good place, you know, that's an important thing to remind yourself of.
I like that.
Okay, muchas
For sure.
gracias.
All right.
Have a good
Till next
weekend,
week.
everybody.
See you next time.
I won't be here next weekend. I'll be traveling again. So
Will you travel or you?
yeah, I know. Isn't that something? So
Okay,
Anyway,
thanks,
see you.
Naomi.
Nice to meet you,
So now-
Naomi.
same here, Kathy. Have a good one.
Bye.
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 Okay, bye-bye. For more information about this online community, to get your own copy of the book upon which this entire training series is based, either the ebook, the paperback, or the audiobook, go to mindtimeandpower.com, where you can also get a free copy of this Design Your Life workbook.